Today we're going to learn how to create highly realistic water reflections in Photoshop by using 3D. Now, the best way to mimic any effect in Photoshop is to mimic as if it was in real life. In this tutorial, we're going to do just the same. Okay? Now, to create a water reflection, how about thinking it in real life? So, suppose you have a picture of a mountain and you want to create water just beneath the mountain, reflecting the mountain. So, I have a prop for you. Think of it like this. You place the picture of the mountain right here, and how about creating a reflecting surface here? And with the camera, you take the picture from right here. So the camera is facing this, okay? You take the picture of this, you have the reflecting surface acting just like water. You have the mountain, picture of the mountain standing upright as it would be in real life, and you're good to go, right? So, pretty interesting tutorial. It's gonna be fun. So without any further ado, let's get started. So here we are in Photoshop, and if you want to download this photo, check the links in the description. And by the way, I don't take any credit for this technique. This technique was taught to me by Corey Barker. He's an awesome Photoshop wizard. Check out more of his work, link in the description below. So first off, what do we have to do? We have to decide where do we want the water to start from. So suppose you want the water to start from here. Okay, keep that in mind. Just keep that in mind. Okay, now make a copy of the background layer. Controller Command J. Nothing selected, that was just for demonstration purposes. Name it Mountain, just for convenience purposes, and create another layer. Okay, now fill it up with black. Now this black layer will act as a reflecting surface, will actually rotate that 90 degrees and convert that into a reflecting surface. So how to fill it up with black? Really simple. Make sure the foreground color is black. If it's not, press X to toggle between the black and the white, the foreground and the background color. And then if the foreground and the background color is some random color, you can always press D to reset the swatches. Here are two buttons to do exactly the same thing. Default foreground and background color, and this one to toggle. So make sure it's black in the foreground and press Alt Backspace, Option Delete if you're using a Mac. Okay, now this is filled with black. Now another way of doing this is pressing Shift Backspace. Now when you press Shift Backspace or Shift Delete, you get this fill dialog box, and then contents you can choose black, not 50% gray, mode normal, opacity 100, click OK. Pretty much that's the same thing, and you can name this water, okay? Great. Now, we need to convert both of these layers into 3D. So, select both of these. How to select both of these? Press and hold Control or Command, select the other one. Both of these have been selected. Also, what you can do, hold the Shift key, select the other one. Pretty much the same thing. Okay, Shift actually selects a couple of layers in line. So for example, you have 3 or 4 layers. You select the first one, hold the Shift, select the last one. Every layer in between those layers will be selected. Control actually does a little bit jaggy stuff. What do I mean by that? Select a layer, hold Control, select the last layer, just 2 layers are selected. You will have to manually go ahead, click on every individual layer for them to be selected. And once you have selected both of them, all you have to do, you have to go to 3D, New Mesh from Layer, and choose Postcard. Now these images are converted to 3D in the form of a postcard. Now, which means it's just a flat surface, just like a postcard in 3D. It asks you, you're about to create a 3D layer. Would you like to switch to 3D workspace? Choose yes. Okay, now this takes you to the 3D workspace. Now what do we want to do? We want to merge those 2 layers, just like shapes. Now if you have created shapes before in Photoshop, live shapes, circles, squares, using these tools, right? If you have created those on separate layers, and if you merge those, you can still separately modify them. Okay, same goes with 3D, but that's not the case with raster layers. Okay, pixel layers, that's not the case with that. But with 3D, even if you merge them, you can specifically separately edit them. Okay, so we want to merge these two. So select the top one and press Ctrl or Command E. Or you could have selected both and press Ctrl or Command E, pretty much the same thing. Now we have this layer and it's named Mountain by default by the name of the layer which is beneath it. Now have a look at the 3D panel. If you cannot look at the 3D panel, go to Windows and then choose 3D. You will be able to look at it. Then you will see two things: mountain mesh, water mesh. Okay, great. Now, if you rotate the camera, if you switch to current view, if you rotate the camera, select the move tool, and then using this, you'll see certain things. Interesting. Have a look. We have the background layer, the same thing, okay, at the background, and this is the mountain, and this is the water, okay. But the water, if you have a look, using this tool, we are using this tool, and the move tool is selected. It's stacked one above the other, the mountain and the water. But we want the water to be like this, right? We don't want the water to be like this. We want it to be like this, okay? So we need to rotate that 90 degrees. So all you have to do, make sure you select the water mesh, this one, not this one, okay? This is actually the material properties, and this is actually the thing, the layer, the mesh. Okay, select that. And you have two bars, two icons in the properties here. And if you cannot see the properties, you know what to do. Go to Windows and then Properties. And select this one and change the X to 90. Okay. Now you can see it. Click on Current View to have a better look. Now, as you can see, it's 90 degrees. The water is right, but we want the water to be a little below, right? A little downwards. Simple. Select the water mesh and you'll see this widget. Okay. 3 arrows. This is the y-axis, this is the x-axis, and this is the z or the z-axis. So just hover over that, and just when it goes yellow, just when the arrow goes yellow, just move it a little downwards. Okay, so we wanted this, okay? Fact that we had decided, okay, that's fine. Now all you have to do, switch to current view back again. And once you click on current view, click on this camera, 3D camera. We had changed the view a little bit. Let's bring back to the original default view. Click on that and choose default. Now the water is not touching the ends of the canvas, so we need to take care of that. So we can take care of that using field of view and the camera zoom. It's all camera. We are not editing the actual picture. It's all camera. But before that, I think, okay, if we move it, have a look, we can always switch back to default camera. The water is extending too much from the back of the image, which is not at all necessary because we just rotated that 90 degrees and it's in half. So we can bring it forward. We can always select the water mesh, and using the green one, you can bring it a little forward. Just like this. Leave a little here. Now let's current view and then default camera. Still a little bit left. So we can fix this just by using camera properties, okay? So change the field of view to somewhere lower. Now what is field of view? It's important to understand that. Now think of field of view just like your camera lens. It's actually a camera lens. Lens, make sure lens is choose millimeter lens. Now if it's at 31, the camera that's capturing this is 31 millimeter, okay? Which means it's using a 31 millimeter lens. Now we need to understand this first. Suppose you have two objects, a ball A, a ball B, both 10 meter apart, okay? You have a camera, you completely zoomed out at 18 millimeter, you completely zoomed out and you're standing right here, okay? So here's the camera, here's ball A, here's ball B. You capture both of the balls at an angle right from here. So of course the ball A will appear bigger in the frame and the ball B will appear very smaller as compared to ball A. Now, you move very further. Whoops, I didn't want to throw the mic off. You move very further and then you zoom in to say 200 millimeter or say 300 millimeter and you capture the same thing. The same thing, the ball A is of the same size because you moved further and you zoomed in. Now when you take a picture at the same angle, you will find that ball B is kind of an equal size with ball A, okay? But if you move forward, you come closer and then zoom out, then the size difference will be too much. If you move further and zoom in, the size difference will be too less. So similarly in this, if we go ahead and decrease the FOV to say, let me just go extreme this time, 10, and hit enter, then if you zoom in with this, you just click on this and just drag. If you zoom in, have a look. This is so big, this is near, this is so big, and this image is so small. Okay, if the FOV is somewhere, say 100, and if I hit enter and if we zoom out a little bit, just like the real camera, if we zoom out a little bit, have a look. It's just a little bigger than this one, just a little bigger. Okay, so we need to find a balance where the FOV and the zoom of the camera is so much so that this is actually touching this and we are covering the whole of the image actually. So let's choose say 18 and let's see what happens. I think 18 would work fine. Let's zoom in, and to zoom in equally, okay, hold the shift key. This will zoom in very equally. Okay, this was not in center. All you have to do, choose default, and then FOV you have to set that 18. Once you choose default, FOV would be set to 31, then choose 18, and then hold the shift key, and using this tool just drag in until it's covering the whole image. Now that's looking perfect. Okay, now we need to convert this into a reflecting surface and this into an illuminating surface. Now why illuminating surface? Now again, back to the prop. Right, if this is just a postcard in a dark room, how will this be reflected? Now what is reflected? Light is reflected. In real life, what happens is that when we look at the mountain, we don't actually see the mountain. We see the light reflected by the mountain. Okay, right? So if there's no light, if it's all in a dark room, so reflection won't be created and it won't make any sense. So we need to convert this into light and this into a reflecting surface. Okay, and then we're gonna add some textures to the water because we don't want the water to be calm. If you want to be calm, I'll tell you what to do. Okay, so first off, open up the 3D panel. So click on Windows and then choose 3D. Now first, let's take care of the mountains. We need to take away the current texture from it, the current properties of this, and convert this into a light. So here's how to do it. So once you choose mountains, go to diffuse, just click on that and click on edit texture. The texture mountain.psd is contained in this scene in multiple places. Changes to this texture will appear in all places. Yes, click OK. Now this will open up the texture in a separate window. All you have to do the same thing, create a new layer, fill it up with black, Alt backspace, and then save it. File, save. Now once you return back to this, it will be black. Now we need to have this to emit some light. But before that, let's remove the texture. On the opacity slider, there we go, click on this and choose remove texture. Now everything is removed. Now for this we need some light. We need the same image in the form of a PSD. So how do we do that? And that's why we had the background layer. So select the background layer and we are out of the 3D thing. Click on this bar, this grid, and choose duplicate layer. And the document, choose new. And you can name this anything you want, maybe light, okay, light 1, let's name it light 1, and click OK. And save that as a PSD. File, save as, and maybe save it as on the desktop, light 1, save it, click OK. Now once it's saved, let's come back to this one and come back to this 3D layer and choose the mountain material properties, click on this one, and illumination. What is illumination? Light, right? So click on this and click on load texture. So in the desktop, light 1, open up and you should see that in form of a light. Okay, loaded pretty nice, pretty well. Now, time for us to adjust the water. So click on the water material properties and increase the shine. Okay, we need the water to shine. Increase the reflection, of course, is 0. Maybe roughness to around 2, 3. You can always play with this later. Bump 10% is fine, opacity is fine, refraction, everything is fine. Now let's go ahead and render this. So you cannot see the reflection as long as you don't render this. So let's render this using this button. So this button usually renders stuff. Also this button does the same. Click on that and it will render that. So I just pressed the escape key and cancelled rendering, because if you actually render this, it will take a lot of time, maybe an hour or two, depending upon the machine. Sometimes it can take 30 minutes if your machine is fast. It's half rendered, so if you, let's just go ahead and select any other tool so that we can see what actually has happened. So this reflection is looking pretty fine. It's looking realistic. And it would be the reflection if the water was calm. Now it's time for us to add some bumps, some texture to the water, some ripples to the water. Okay, so for that, let's select the move tool again and come back to 3D and choose the water properties. Of course, we would add some bump. It's pretty self-explanatory. So all you have to do, click on this and choose new texture. Okay, now in this, you are going to put the width and the height of this the same as that of the document. How to find that out? Look below. Okay, it's right there. If you cannot see that, let's cancel this. If you cannot see that, just click on this arrow and choose document dimensions. Okay, once you click on document dimension, you'll be able to see this. Okay, now bump, new texture, and put the same values. 5184, 5184. This one is 2645, 2645. Okay, pixels, everything is fine. Click OK. It will open up a new document where we will create the texture. Now there's a filter in Photoshop which generates some very nice fiber-like textures, but the problem with that is it only applies the texture, creates the texture vertically. So we can usually tackle that by rotating the canvas. So go to image rotation, 90-degree clockwise. We rotate that 90 degrees and then go to filter, then render, fibers. And you can create the texture and use that as a water. Also, here's the tip. If you want it to be editable, modifiable, you can always convert that into a smart object, but that will slow down the process. Only do that if you're using a fast computer. Let me show you how to do that. Okay, so first of all, unlock this and you can right click on this and choose convert to smart object. Now you can apply the fibers and you will be able to change that later. See, it's taking a lot of time to convert this into a smart object. You can go to filter, render, fibers, and once you apply that, you can always come back and change the values, but it's slow. Okay, if your machine is fast, go for it. If you have time, go for it. I'm just gonna come back to the background layer, rotate that, and then same thing, filter, render, fibers. Okay, zoom out a little bit using this button to see how the water will look. Okay, just like that, that's looking fine. You can increase or decrease the variance. Think of it just like the water texture. So strength. Just play with the sliders to see what it actually does. It's difficult to explain, but when you see it, it's easier. Okay, there we go, just like that water. But here's the problem, if we zoom out, it's a little bit too dark here, if you can see what I mean. And we need to click on randomize again and again to exactly have what we want. So this is kind of an even texture. Click OK. Now let's rotate that back. Image rotation, 90-degree counterclockwise. We rotated that clockwise, then counterclockwise. It's pretty much the same again. Now after applying the fiber texture, you might have observed that it's quite sharp and it's quite harsh. We need to make it a little smooth, right? So if we go ahead and if we zoom in, have a look. It's very sharp. Let's make it a little smooth. How to make it smooth? Easy. Let's apply some blur. So we're going to apply two kinds of blur, motion blur and Gaussian blur. So first off, go to filter, blur, motion blur. So motion blur blurs it in one direction. So not the band, but visually. Actually, the band split up, I guess. Anyway, make sure the angle is 0 and distance, you can go to 50-ish, 52, something like that. Look here. Okay. So this is the before. If I click once and hold it, this is the before and this is the after. 50 is kind of too much. Let's decrease it. Maybe 38, 40 is fine. Click OK. And then let's apply some Gaussian blur. Filter, blur, Gaussian blur. And let's keep the values a little lower. 2 is fine, I guess. No, that's too much. Maybe 1.5 would be fine. Okay. Now, most of it is white. Okay. We want most of it black and some areas white, because white are the areas which will be bumped, which will be alleviated. Okay, so if we have this like that, so every area will have huge bumps and we don't want that. So press Ctrl Command I to invert this. Now only the white areas will have bumps, small white areas. If you're satisfied with this, click File, Save. And you can close it if you want. It's saving right now. And let's come back to this one. And now let's again render this. So now once you hit a render, it's gonna take a lot of time. So let's get ready, hit the render, and let's see if we have to do something else. I just hit escape again. Isn't that wonderful? Let's just go ahead and select any other tool to have a look. Wow, it is amazing. Now you can calm the waters. It's some fine textures. This is also looking great. But let me show you a couple of other things. But before I show you that, you will see at the end we have these white leaks. Why do we have those white leaks? It is because in the 3D world, we just have this. Okay, have a look. We just have this and it's not extending much. Okay, in real life, it's extending. So just as a reflection, it's taking everything else into consideration. This, everything outside this, everything inside it. So there's a white leak in the corner. We can always crop that later. Okay, we can also solve that by using a larger image or by using the same image and just creating a reflection of just a portion of that. Okay, that's similar to cropping. Now, you can just make the texture bigger or smaller by going back to this one, and had you converted that into a smart object, you can go to the fiber properties and then increase or decrease the values. But this is a raster image now. We did not convert this into a smart object just for faster processing. So let's come back to this one. There's one more thing which you can do. Once you select the water mesh, okay, then there's a thing in bump. Click on this and you can change the UV properties. So click on UV properties and there's a thing called VY. Now, if you increase that to 200%, what will happen is it will expand the texture. Okay, so if the texture is just like this, if you increase it to 200%, the length will increase, the texture will increase, so it will be like this. Got it? Okay, if you decrease this, it will become more finer. Since this was very fine, let's just increase that to 200%. Okay, fine. Click OK and render again. Anytime you apply an effect, anytime you increase the bump properties or decrease the reflections or increase the shine, you will have to render it. Okay, so that's the negative point. Maybe in future we'll have super fast computers which can do that in real time, but for now the optimization isn't that great, the computers isn't that awesome. So let's just click on render. Let's see what happens. Isn't that awesome? I just hit the escape key and here's the final result after complete rendering. I just let it render for maybe 5% or something like that, but for complete rendering it might take an hour or sometimes 2 hours depending upon the size of the image and your computer speed. So that's it. You can always go ahead, change all these values, the ambient properties, the shine, the reflection, the roughness. Change these values, the shine, reflection, all these properties, and then you can change the UV properties. You can still experiment with how high the water is, the field of view and all that stuff. One last step we can do, we can crop in the sides to remove these white stuff. So here's what you can do. Currently we are in the current view and here's how this looks. Now you cannot see any crop tool here because we just switched to 3D workspace. Okay, so we have to switch back to normal one, go to Windows, Workspace, you can choose Essentials, and this is Unmesh one. This is my favorite workspace that I have set for the tutorial. So I'll choose this and we'll get back to this. Now you'll be able to see the crop tool. You can also press C. Let's zoom out a little bit. You can press C and just crop in the sides a little bit, just like that. Just like that. Hit enter once you're satisfied. And that will be fine. Now once you do anything, you see this turns black again. Why? Because this has to be rendered again. So you again have to go to the 3D properties. You don't have to go to the 3D workspace. Just click on this and open Windows 3D and then just render the water. Just click on this and it will render that automatically. I'm just gonna click and fast forward. So that's how you actually create highly realistic reflections in Photoshop. Just remember this, you have your mountains standing upright right here. You have this as a reflecting surface and you have a camera here. The focal length of which you decide, the field of view 18mm, 35mm, whatever there is, you decide that. Just like a real camera, a real reflecting surface just like water, you add some texture, add some ripples to that, and then you have the mountain standing upright and you convert that into what? An illuminating surface, a light, because in real life also it is light, okay? Reflected light, but it's light. Reflected and reaching to your eyes. Hope this made sense to you. Hope you learned something, and if you did, make sure to give us a like and also don't forget to subscribe, and not just subscribe. Ring the bell so that you, my friend, don't miss anything. Also, I would like to thank all these nice people for making this episode possible and making Piximperfect free for everybody forever. Thank you so much guys for watching and keep creating.